Hello, my name is Kris Nelson from the website evolveconsciousness.org. I'm going to be presenting the Law of Freedom Part 4, Karma. Let's get into it. So, when we're dealing with karma, these are conceptions. It's a word. Obviously, we're going to get to the etymology, see how it's defined. But it's conception, so people can have different conceptions of karma. So these are other conceptions, other things that people can relate to reality in different ways, and then they also relate it to karma. So Mark Passio has brought these up. So we got cause and effect. Now, pretty much everyone knows, it's part of reality. I don't know if anyone hasn't heard of cause and effect. And I got these arrows pointing in the flow of how things happen. So you have an action and a reaction. But cause and effect goes, like, say, from you outward, and maybe it can affect someone else. And in turn, well, that person can create a cause that then comes back and affects you. But these are optional. Like the one on the bottom doesn't have to happen. So if you're creating a cause, it has an effect, but the related effect that you're going to get for someone else's cause related to the effect that you created, well, maybe that won't happen. And when you reap what you sow, people are probably familiar with this one too, in the general public. And that one is where it loops around, because it's not just going out and then that's the end of it, because that's what a cause and an effect is. It's starting at a cause and it's going out to the effect. And if you look at consciousness, that's the internal realm, and then it goes out as our actions and behaviors in the external realm. But when you reap what you sow, it's something going out, but then coming back. That's the whole inclination of you reap. So here's a little graphic for that. Is you sow a cause, and it has an effect in the universe. Then time can pass, and then there can be other causes in a causal chain that come back, and then you reap the effect. So when we're talking about you reap what you sow, the law of attraction, and you get what you deserve, it's this idea of it loops back around to you. And yes, that involves cause and effect, but cause and effect is not a requirement for it to loop around back to you. In terms of something else, like you reaping something, like if you create a cause and you create an effect, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to reap anything about it, whether it's positive or negative. So when you reap what you sow, I have some examples, we'll get into it, so I'm just going to briefly mention these common conceptions. Whoopsie. Don't go ahead yet. The law of attraction. That one's popular in like so-called spiritual circles, New Age, that type of thing. And that's where the claim is that you attract more of what you put out. So whatever you put out, so here I have it. This is pretty much with these looping ones, but more with the law of attraction, and you deserve what you get. What you do comes back to you. So if you do good, it loops around and you get good. If you do bad or evil, well, it loops around and comes back at you. So you will guaranteed receive a positive or negative return for the positive or negative you created. But is that so? Is that how it's always going to happen? You will guaranteed that if you do evil, you're going to get evil? Well, we can take a look at that more in analyzing karma in this presentation. I understand that that's not necessarily the case. But that's what the law of attraction especially, and the concept of, well, you get what you deserve. Whatever happens to you, if you're poor, you get mugged, anything bad happens to you, oh, well, you get what you deserve. That's your karma. That's just fate and destiny. So there's these, I view them as toxic. As toxic mindsets, toxic conceptions related to karma that don't accurately represent reality, as far as I can tell. in a verifiable, determined, demonstrable way. So it could be that this is happening in some other way, and I'll get at that, analysis and deconstruction of those other conceptions that are tied to these in subsequent presentations. It might be the next one, but those slides are not finalized yet. So I think that's enough for understanding the common conceptions tied to karma and how they interrelate. So when we think about karma, and a lot of the things we saw in the last slide, like you reap what you sow, and you deserve what you get, the law of attraction, what you put out comes back to you. Well, it's around this mindset of trying to figure out, well, why did this happen to me? You make sense of what happens. So we can see here, I forget the actor's name. I mentioned it in the last episode, and the discussion was, I think it's from Dawson's Creek, and he says, why? Just why me? So why did it happen to you? Well, so things happen. Why? What is the reason? You can often trace a causality chain to find an answer to why. The mind tries to find answers, sometimes imagining ideas or frameworks to explain some or all things. But are those conceptions true? Can they be verified? So that's the important thing, is we can have many conceptions, and when we're trying to figure out, like, well, why did this happen to me? Why did this bad thing happen to me? Why did this good thing? Oh, well, it must have been because I did something good. Oh, it must have been because I did something bad. Or explaining why that happened to someone else. Oh, well, they must have done something bad. So some think everything that happens to you is deserved, that you earn the positive or the negative. Every negative that happens to you is because you did a negative. It's a balancing system in the universe. This idea that it's a balancing. So good goes out from you, good goes back into you. Evil goes out from you, evil goes back into you from an external source affecting you. So it's a balancing system in the universe, right? That's an answer as to why this is happening. Because if you didn't receive payback, whether it's good or bad, then that wouldn't be fair or just, would it? So if you did good, but you never got good back, well, that wouldn't be fair or just. Or if someone did evil and they never got punished for it, well, that wouldn't be fair or just, would it? That if there wasn't an automatic payback mechanism, the universe wouldn't be orderly by letting evil or chaos go on without any balance to bring back order. So this is how many people view the idea of karma. Fairness, order, balance, and justice underlie the idea of karma. It's all wrapped into it as to why this idea makes sense to them, and they accept it in whatever conceptual way that they accept that word to mean. Free will doesn't always factor into these ideas of how you, quote, deserve what you get. Nor is free will factored in as the only verifiable way to restore order, balance, or fairness when evil is created. So you can think of many other ways that, oh yeah, they're gonna get punished, they'll get it, and in the next life or something. All these conceptions, but the one that we can verify that actually does happen is when free will steps up, takes action, and that's the ordering force, the will that we activate from within us that brings back order and balance and fairness when evil is created. So here's a little breakdown of order and chaos, very brief, from a certain perspective anyways, and related to fearing chaos to seek false order. So the second law of thermodynamics refers to states of order tending to progress towards a disorderly or chaotic state. But both can be looked at as different kinds of order, and that would be implicate order and explicate order. So I've gone into this in some of my earlier work, and it relates to David Bohm, who I think was the protege of Einstein. He came up with this idea of an implicate and explicate order. So an implicate order is a grouping order, so where simpler things come together to form more organized higher order constructs. So that would be, think of atoms or subatomic particles to then form protons, neutrons, and then they come together as atoms, elements, and then those form molecules and compounds, and then, oh look, here we are. Right, higher order constructs. Explicate order is where things separate and distribute symmetrically. So you can think of a hot cup of water. Well, the heat distributes evenly. It dissipates evenly everywhere. So it's a symmetrical order. One's a grouping order, and the other one's a symmetrical order. But that's what entropy and the chaos is. But it's a different way of looking at it as another type of order. And when you're looking at the universal level, well, everything is ordered because everything operates according to law. If it wasn't possible to be done in the universe, well, if it's possible to be done in the universe, that's because the background processes of existence, those laws, as I talked about in the first presentation, well, they exist there and they allow that to happen. So we're not going to jump and turn into a puddle of water because that's not how the universe is constructed. So at the universal level, everything is ordered. Chaos is part of the natural order. Entropy is part of the natural order of the universe. Things dissipate, but things also group together and build up into higher order constructs. There's this dual aspect. So we get order out of chaos. From that chaos, both of the symmetrical sense, there's an order, even though it's opposite to the grouping order. And obviously the order out of chaos has a lot of different meanings. The greatest chaos humans create is immoral behavior. Moral behavior creates order, hence the symbolism of Ma'at with morality, order, balance, justice, law, etc. Personal chaos for us is still order in the impersonal, amoral universe. So the universe isn't making things only moral. The universe allows for morality and immorality. It allows for harm and non-harm to be done. So it's amoral because it's not making you do something. The universe is impersonal. It's not favoring what you do and letting you off the hook for something, etc. No matter what chaos or evil we create, things will still be ordered according to laws that allow that to happen and the results that follow. Humans have a primal fear of chaos as immorality, pain, or conflict, even discomfort. That's viewed as chaos. So viewing the universe as favoring our personal order, balance, fairness, or security is desired. Relating back to the previous slide, people want, why'd this happen? You have a question, you want to find an answer. It's got to be fair and just and balanced, and it's got to personally be ordered for me. Things have to make sense in my life. If someone does something bad, they can't just get away with it. That wouldn't be a fair universe. So because of that desire, this has us crave false order and security via the belief in authority. That's the major one. Or belief in ideas that make us feel reassured that things end up personally ordered and just, like some ideas of karma. So because of that desire for things to make sense, to have personal order, that things work out in the end, even if you're not going to see it yourself, well, that bad person, they're going to get their comeuppance. And we desire that security and fairness and balance because we fear the opposite, the insecurity, being unsafe, being in danger. And chaos and immorality, well, that's the things that we don't want. So we want things to protect us from that. So we want that order and security, and we buy it through the false belief in authority. Or we can come up with other conceptions like karma conceptions to make sense of things, even though we can't verify that it actually works that way. So these are questionable ideas about karma. I'm just going to read through them. I'm not going to comment on them. They're just here to, give you an idea of some questionable ideas about karma, and probably in the future presentations, I will get into like analyzing them more and making counter arguments as to why I don't, why I have questions, why they're questionable to me, why I view them as problematic in terms of if you're going to accept them as true, but you can't verify it or demonstrate it. So that's why I put at the bottom. Is it verifiable, demonstrable? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I just don't know how. But can they be reformulated in ways that are? So all of these ways, if you take it more as a symbolic way, then you can make sense of them in ways that are verifiable. So just quickly, past lives, instead of literally a past life, well, you can look at it as well. The past lives of every human that has come before is what created the world that it is now. And what we're doing now is going to create the world that future humans are going to be born into. So there's a way of looking at past lives, and those people are going to be born into a world. And that's their fate at the moment, the destiny they're born into, but they can change it with their actions. So there's different ways of interpreting it, just like the top one. So personal, direct, automatic payment, payback, justice ordering mechanism. That individual only, so not collective karma as we're going to talk about, but that there's this automatic payback, justice ordering mechanism in the universe that's personal and direct. It goes right back to the person who did it themselves alone, and it doesn't affect anyone else, but they get the negative karma right back to them, and justice is served, and everything is nice and balanced in the universe. So individual only karma from an automatic fairness justice process, a balancing to bring back what was sent out, positive for positive, negative for negative, from the universe without any free will needed for reciprocity, balance, or payback. It must happen for all actions, otherwise the universe wouldn't be fair or just or ordered if the bad actors never got individually, personally punished. So you don't need free will, and the universe is going to take care of it, because the universe is a balancing, justice, ordering mechanism individually, on an individual scale. Specifically to the individual, it goes right back in a one-to-one relationship. So the way that this is flawed is because it's not looking at the way it actually applies demonstrably, which is with the collective karma, which a lot of this presentation is about. So past lives, fate and destiny. So this is in the Eastern beliefs of the sum of your actions in a past life determines what your next life will be. So you're locked in it. It's your fate, your destiny. You're fucked. That's it. That's all. Nothing you can do about it. You can just try to do things better in this life, not screw up, so that when a reincarnation happens, then things will be better for you there, but forget about it here. What happens to you is your karma that you deserve and are meant to experience based on your past life. Accept your karma, accept your fate, accept your destiny. It's disempowering. It's all part of God's hand. That's by God's hand, or part of God's plan. This is very religious, and I guess the Bible thumpers have more of this one. So God is rewarding or punishing you individually and personally, directly and specifically to you alone. And it's all part of God's plan who makes things happen. So again, are these things verifiable? Are they demonstrable? Can we reformulate them in ways that make more sense? Yes. So we get down to the etymology here. For karma, from an Indian context, is the sum of a person's actions in one life, right? Everyone usually understands this idea of the Eastern karma. It determines your form in the next, so it's from the Sanskrit karma. Action, work, deed, or fate. So action, work, deed, or fate. And from the maybe from the Proto-Indo-European root, to make or to form. So you can see that karma is about actions, right? Action, work, deed, or fate. And we can knock off the fate one because that one's dealing with the Eastern belief. So action, work, deed. So it's what you do and what you make happen. So what you're making happen is your actions itself, but what you make happen is also what your actions produce as effects in the world. The cause of your actions produces an effect in the universe. So you make that effect happen. Or that's something that you create as a result of your actions. So that's a consequence. The effect is a consequence of the cause. So as a consequence of what you do. Hence, your actions are causes which create effects in the world, and that's causality. Consider those effects over the span of your life. Those effects can affect you or others to produce more actions from yourself or from other people, like the actions others create in response to your actions that will affect you. And we're going to look at you reap what you sow. Everyone's familiar with this. So I'm breaking it down into the different types of reaping what you sow. And there's a negative I have some little examples here just to make it relatable. Negative consequence and a positive consequence. So I break down into self and other directed sowing to reap from. So you're reaping from things you do to yourself or things you do to others, right? So you have, and also breaking it down from self and other as a near instant reaping, something that happens almost immediately, or a delayed reaping. You could also look at this as like instant karma or delayed karma. So if person one sows an action of kicking a chair, well, they're going to reap the consequence of having a hurt toe. And that's pretty instant. It might not be like instantaneous. It might take a 5-10 seconds, and then you're going to feel it, and it hurts. Or you grab a glass, and then you drink from it. It doesn't take that long. When you're doing it to another person, you're going to sow an action like punch someone. Well, they can punch you back pretty quick. Or you can help someone carry groceries, and then they can give you an apple or something as a thanks, or I don't know, whatever. It's just a basic example. So when you do it to yourself, you reap what you sow to yourself. And a delayed sense is you sow like eating low health food. And you keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And then as time passes, well, what you're going to reap, right? What you're going to reap is, well, you're going to have health issues later. If you're eating poor food, quality in, quality out, affects the body too. Garbage in, garbage out. So you put bad health in, you're going to get bad health out. And a positive example is, positive consequence is where you plant seeds and then you get to harvest the food to eat. And that takes time, and then you get to reap what you sow. And that's where the literal meaning is that you're sowing seeds and then you're reaping the harvest. So that's literally where the saying comes from. Relates to planting seeds and then growing the food, waiting, and then reaping the harvest. And when you do it to another in a delayed sense, so the negative consequence is, let's say someone steals a TV. Well, they can find you, and what you're going to reap is restitution. So they're going to collect their loss, they're going to get their TV back, and then they can apply a penalty. And a positive sense is you help someone move, and then they help you later in some way. Maybe they help you move, something else. So that's just breaking down, as I mentioned, self and other, instant and delayed types of you reap what you sow, or you can look at this as karma. Balance by sending back the negative. So here I'm looking at the etymological karma and negative karmic consequence. So not as the way other people might look at it or the way I'm going to narrow it down afterwards. I'm just going to look at the etymology, because the etymology it's about actions and what you make happen, right? So I have here karma 1. That's what the K1 is. That was the first part of the definition of karma, was your action. Because karma just literally means action, work, deed. So it's action as karma. That's the cause part. But you have like a second level of karma, which is the result consequence. That's what was also at the root, to make happen. Or what you make happen is the result, the consequences of the action as the karma, and that's the effect. So you have the karma as a cause and you have the karma as an effect. So here's a modeling that out, where we're going to look at this in, obviously, immorality is the whole point of learning about the law of freedom. Morality in general and immorality. So person 1 got something they wanted, and person 2 lost something they didn't consent to have taken. So here's an example. Person 1 punches, they initiate harm. They're sowing a cause, that first level karma. Then there's an effect, that second level karma. It's a consequence that they made happen to them. It's not a reaping that came back, right? It didn't come back to them. But it's a karma in terms of the result and consequence of their action. Well, that result and consequence affected person 2. That effect had an effect. They got hit. So a negative karmic consequence was initiated. That person 2 got hit. Now, person 2 could do nothing, but they can do something. Right, person 2 and others, or others in the place of person 2, well, they can create their own cause. And they can go out and create an action, punching the person back, 1-2 punch. That's a defensive response as opposed to initiating harm. So there's a defensive response. Well, that's going to be where the person reaps what they sowed. They sowed it here, and then they're going to get it back as reaping. And that's where you're returning the negative karmic consequences, being returned. Because if you just, what we have in the world is a lot of just, we're made to take it. And that creates an imbalance because it's only one way. So you have, for it to go back both ways, to make a full circle, right? It has to go back to the origin. Here's the origin. And we go around in a circle, 360 degrees, poop, back to the origin. Well, that's when you're returning the negative. They dealt out a negative, and they're going to receive a negative in return. So these free will agents, free will causal agents, well, they're going to engage in a defensive response where violence is not tolerated, and they're going to return. They're going to push back against the violence, and they're going to return a negative karmic consequence. And then they get to reap what they sowed. So person 2 can't undo the negative karmic consequence they got. In terms of the etymological karma, right? I'm not talking about how most people view karma, which is a consequence and a negative consequence. That's in the next slide. And we'll be just dealing with that view of karma afterwards. But I'm just talking about etymologically, you can view karma in this sense and break it down this way. So they can't undo the karma, the negative karmic consequence that they got from the initiator of harm. But they can return to sender, like a male, the negative karmic consequence as a disincentive to not repeat, to collect the karmic debt. So this person 1 created a karmic debt, and they're collecting on that debt. Or effect restitution, which is the loss and penalty. That's collecting on the debt. So for example, another example, as property is stolen by person 1, person 2 gets it back with the moral unity of others. Person 1 gets a warning. Like, you can just give them a warning. They took your toy car or something. There's teaching involved, so people can get warnings. I just put it here as like, not to make it like absolutely every time you have to go beat the person down or something. You got to evaluate the situation, the context. So you can give a warning to the person, you get back your property, or you can have them pay a penalty for the immoral action. So they can pay with something they own. Right now we have money, so they can pay with money. So they have to give back the loss, the thing that was taken, plus a penalty. Otherwise, as I mentioned in my previous work on natural law, the science of morality, if there's no penalty and all the person has to do is just give back what they took, then they can just keep retrying over and over and over and over and over, because there's no actual incentive to stop. There's no actual punishment. All you're doing is just returning what you took. So you can just keep doing it forever and ever and ever. So that doesn't make any sense. So they can pay back with something they own. They can work it off. You say, okay, we'll come here. I have work to do, fix my windows, do this. You come to agreements. Or in some cases, take a beating. Maybe someone's a repeat offender and they keep doing it and they work it off for people, and then they just keep doing it. So maybe they just need to feel the physical pain for the theft that they engage in for something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure we've all seen movies where, vengeance movies or something like that, where vigilante or vengeance movies, or just dirtbag assholes. They deserve what they get. They get a pounding on. There's like I forget the movie with Patrick Swayze. Roadhouse. There was a remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. I liked it. I like those movies of like making bad people like pay. I don't know. That's always like resonated with me long before I was into Passio. That's why I guess I love Passio so much, because of his attitude towards it. It was like a kindred mindset of so the Roadhouse, that type of thing. Sometimes the guy just needs to take a fucking beating to learn not to do it. You got to put a bully in their place. I guess that's what I'm getting at. So karma has a negative consequence. So this is how people mostly view karma. I'm going to refer to it in this sense from now on, because, we can put aside the etymology. We can more get down to how most people view it. And it's a negative consequence. So karma is action, which inherently has a result or consequence. So we're not going to be looking at the action part of the karma etymology and definition. We're going to be looking at the result, the consequence. And not just the consequence as in this one here, right? We're not going to be looking at this one. We're going to be talking about this consequence, the reaping consequence, where karma and you reap what you sow ties in together, where it comes back to you. So it goes back into part of the conceptualization of the law of attraction and, deserve what you get. Those things aren't 100% of the time, but it ties more into that looping around. So karma is an action which inherently has a result or consequence, be it a positive or negative, for yourself or for others. The main aspect of interest regarding consequences with respect to natural law and morality are concerning the idea of justice, order and balance, mat, for doing wrongs, for creating immoral behaviors, injustices. This is the notion of negative karmic consequences as a return to a violator, to restore justice, not as the initial negative effect received by those who are wronged, those who are violated. This is the core of the concept of karma as a moral consequence. It's that looping around. Where's the camera? Here, yeah. It's got to come back to you. Not the first one where the guy initiates the harm and then, there's a consequence, a negative karmic consequence to the person they harmed. Talking about when it comes full circle, that's what most people view as, it's going to come back to you. But it comes back to you when free will makes it come back to you. So this is the core concept. It's a negative payback for injustice. I think a lot of people would view karma as that. We could look at it as positive karma too. But when you're talking about, karma usually has a negative connotation. So this is the negative connotation that it has, is that it's a negative payback because you did something wrong, and then you're going to get a negative in return because you did that wrong. So this can also be further categorized into direct and willful. So those go together. Direct and willful, and indirect and automatic negative karmic consequence. The direct is where the negative karmic consequence applies to specific individuals alone. The indirect is where the negative karmic consequence applies to an aggregate or collective of individuals. When the will is not applied, so I'm going to explain this more in the next slide. When the will is not applied to create justice or order of direct negative karmic consequences to the individual violators themselves, that means you're not applying your will, you're engaging in inaction, right? Well, this promotes repeat violations, which results in an automatic, indirect, negative karmic consequence applied to the aggregate called slavery. So this is where the law of freedom kicks in, because when everyone accepts, condones, supports, and tolerates immorality that is persisted and on a wide scale, then, as I showed in the previous slide, the return, you gotta send it back. Return to sender. Well, it's not being returned to the sender. So that the negative isn't being sent back here to create the direct karmic consequence to the violators. So the karma, the negative karma, remains where it was dropped off, and that's on the people who were violated, and it stays there, and it just keeps staying there. So the karma just goes, it spreads out to the aggregate, because that's what's being done, is the immorality is being applied to the aggregate, to the collective. And so it's an indirect negative karmic consequence in some cases, because it's indirect because it's not direct to the individual, is what I mean. So you have direct and willful, where will is applied to apply karma, negative consequences directly to a violator. So it's you, or 5 of you, or 100 of you, or 1,000 of you. Well, here's directly the negative consequence you are going to get, and it's not going to affect other people. Indirect and automatic is, will isn't being applied to do that previous part. So now there's the negative karmic consequence is going to be applied to everyone, and it's an automatic process because it's not willful, it's not willed and volitional, not willed into existence, and it's indirect because it's not being applied to the people who did the violation. It's not coming back to that sowing and reaping back to the violator. It's remaining dispersed and affecting everybody. So here I go into it a bit more. Direct and indirect reaping of immorality, reaping negative karmic consequences. Negative karma is applied within the law with free will participation. So that's applying directly to the violators, or without free will participation. So it's indirectly applied. So it's not applied to the violators, it's applied indirectly to everybody in the area. So when you do have a direct negative reaping, that's where the individual reaps what they sowed. So already went in that in the previous slides. We already understand that. So it's to the violators, the sowers themselves. So it can be from without. So you can have a negative reaping from without, so from others, and that's created by free will response of using the self-defense principle, or the defense principle, because it might not be for yourself, you might be defending others. So that's why self is in parentheses. So that's active, because it's an action, and it's the causality of applied will. But sometimes this part doesn't happen. So just because there isn't a direct application by others in a defensive mechanism whereby they're going to make you pay back your karmic debt. Well, in non-psychopaths, we have emotions and we have guilt. So there's this aspect of a direct negative reaping from yourself when you do bad things, when you do immoral things. So this is when it's created within the individual as a psychological trauma. So it might not be like PTSD level or whatever, but it's a trauma. And there's guilt, and that creates dis-ease, right? They're not at ease. They're in the psychological, I guess, structure or the integrity and the wholeness is fractured, broken, disintegrated in some capacity because of what they did. They have guilt, shame, whatever. So the disease is can be unresolved as mental or physical illness. So if you're not resolving that trauma from what you did, or you can get mental illness or physical illness, or depression, other things. And yeah, this is absent in psychopaths because they just don't give a shit, so they're not going to feel guilt. And yeah, this one probably won't happen to them, And the only thing that's going to bring back any form of direct negative reaping to them is for other people to make it happen, to make them pay for what they did. And then we have the indirect negative reaping. So that's where the collective reaps what they collectively sowed, what they all did, or if they didn't all do it, they didn't sow it themselves, or they allowed to be sowed, as in they all allowed some to do to them. They all allowed others to do to them. And that's what we have now, right? All of society, we're all allowing, we're all sowing by our inaction, right? Because that's what this is it's passive, it's inaction. And it's the causality of unapplied will. So you can apply will and you can not apply will. And both of them are having causal effects because they're letting it persist. So we're all allowing what a group are doing to us. They're stealing from us. They're, in many ways, they're violating our rights. They're preventing us from engaging in things we have a right to do. So this is the indirect negative reaping is being applied to everyone, letting the violators continue creating violence. The more people are affected by persistent, the more people are affected, the more that people are affected by my God, I'm having trouble with that one. The more that people are affected by the persistent violence, the more freedom in the aggregate degrades, hence the law of freedom. And as I mentioned, it's passive inaction instead of an active, because it's an action, it's an inaction, and it's the causality of unapplied will, which is where we find ourselves at in our comfortable slavery. That will probably get worse. And so we can see how the law of freedom is basically karma. The law of freedom as karma. Behavior is a cause that produces effects in reality. The law of freedom is about moral or immoral behaviors of all, that is to say, the collective, leading to the condition of freedom or slavery. The behavior is a primary karma, right? The cause, the action, the first thing you make. But you are also making the consequences happen, which is a secondary karma. So the law of freedom exhibits the causality of the collective morality or immorality of our behaviors leading to the condition of freedom or slavery. The law of freedom exhibits the collective karma of actions and consequences thereof. It exhibits how we collectively reap what we collectively sow by participating in and supporting immoral ways of living. That is to say, authority, a system of control. It exhibits how we collectively attract immorality as a way of life. So that's how you can reframe the law of attraction and understand it as, well, we're attracting this because we're part of this causality of how we're not doing anything about it, and we're even supporting it and tolerating it. So that's what we're attracting to us, because we're not doing anything about it. And how we collectively deserve the immorality we get because we collectively choose to not stop the immorality from persisting. So you can see how the attract and deserve related to the first slide in the presentation on the general concepts, or common conceptions. I forget how I titled it. Well, those were, and the second slide, that people view this as like a direct thing that's going to happen to the individual. That's how they view these conceptions, is, oh, well, you attract, you personally are attracting what you put out. So it's based on what you put out, and it's going to come back to you. It's a one-to-one thing. But no, in some ways, like, you can look at it. But when we're talking about immorality like this, no. In terms of the law of freedom, the law of attraction is a collective thing that we're attracting. And just like we collectively deserve it, so do I individually deserve it? Do other people in the chat and on Facebook and doing presentations and making content and other places trying to wake people up and teach morality and stuff like that, do they necessarily deserve it if they're trying to do something to put an end to evil, to put an end to this? No, they don't deserve it, because they're trying to stop it. But, you know, we're bound to the free will actions of others. No man is an island. We don't create reality by ourselves. So everything that's being done is by all of us together. So collectively, we deserve it. You know, I don't deserve it because I'm not on the mindset of the collective of supporting, tolerating, and wanting to accept it. But to change it, you need a majority to actually change the reality. So the consequences of evil benefiting. No incentive to stop being evil means you get indirect negative reaping. You can do what you want, but not without consequences. Whatever you can physically do is already possible within the laws of nature. You can walk off a cliff, but there are consequences for doing so. You are going against the positive consequential aspect of operating within the law of gravity. If you're going to walk off a cliff, well, that's the negative consequential aspect of operating within the law of gravity. You don't have a choice whether you're going to operate within it or not. But you should make choices on whether you're going to choose the positive or the negative path, because that's what you're going to get as a result. When it comes to the morality of behavior and initiating harm or not, you can do what you want, but not without consequences that affect others or yourself. The consequences will ideally be that you get reciprocity from others for that initiation of harm. If that isn't done, and you repeat the immorality without being stopped, you can keep doing it to others, and the consequences are that everyone who permits it lives in a permanent state of less freedom, otherwise known as slavery, operating according to the law of freedom. Since you're getting away with it, you don't care about the degradation of freedom. You have a benefit. You're winning. Hey, you're a winner. Winner, winner, winner. You have a benefit for degrading the overall condition. The overall condition is getting degraded, but you're ending up on top. You're ending up above the others. You gained from the loss created to another. So you have no incentive to stop, since you have no net loss incurred for your actions. You just keep gaining for yourself, and evil wins. Dispersing negative karma to all. Your actions aren't predestined. You can change behaviors and outcomes of situations. Given the creation of immoral actions, you can rightfully receive negative consequences as payback from other individuals, immediately or in the future. So that's instant or delayed. That's one form of pressure that will create the change of not having that behavior repeated. You're going to apply consequences, well, you're incentivizing them not to do that again. Failure to apply this pressure to change invites repetition of the behavior, as there is no incentive to change. The result of living in a world that is created by the actions of all individuals who collectively don't apply this pressure is creating a collective negative karmic consequence. That's everyone, the collective, feeling that negative karmic consequence. When individuals are allowed to get away with persistent immorality on a wide scale, say being applied to the majority, those who are violated with receiving the negative result of immorality have the negative remain on them as the negative karmic consequence. That's what I mentioned earlier, where it's the initiator drops the negative consequence at the feet of those who are violated, and then it remains there. And that's where it stays, because it's not being returned. There's no balance. It's an imbalance. So that's the true sense of balance in Ma'at, is about when immorality is created. So I'm not talking about the scales. I haven't analyzed it in that respect, but in terms of balancing, it's not balancing good with evil and morality with immorality. It's when there's immorality created, that creates the imbalance, and you got to send back a negative, a karmic debt collection, and then that rebalances things. And there's other ways you can look at the balancing of Ma'at as well. So the negative karmic consequence is dispersed to everyone because negative karmic consequences were not willfully applied to the individual violators. Everyone falsely absorbs the karmic debt. So it's not their karmic debt, right? It belongs to the violators. But because it wasn't direct, the karmic debt wasn't collected from the violators directly, well, everyone falsely absorbs the karmic debt. You could look at it in that sense. But it's not our karmic debt, but we're just leaving it there. We're carrying it for them. You could look at it. So everyone falsely absorbs the karmic debt of a wide-scale, persistent, immoral negative outcome that is allowed to continue. The negative consequence was not returned, so it remains where the violator put it. Free will, causal agent, karma. Free will against another free will. When a free will causal agent, FWC1, initiates direct harm to another free will causal agent, a second person, the only 100% sure way that direct individual negative karmic consequences occur to the first one is when a free will causal agent, it could be the second one or another one or a group, when they act to bring that negative karmic consequence directly to that individual. Initiated harm on an aggregate scale to all or most people in an area produces indirect, aggregate, negative karmic consequences unless they're stopped. And when they're stopped, well, that's when you're applying the direct, individual negative karmic consequence to them. To have a direct individual negative karmic consequence brought back to a violator always requires a free will causal agent to act to create that negative karmic consequence. For example, air and water pollution from industry, people's health in an area are harmed. You look at that in history, you can look at it now. It's still going on. Dumping, polluting, people getting sick, diseases, cancers. And there's no direct karmic consequence, negative karmic consequence being applied to those people who keep doing it. And they make money. That's why they do it. They're not being punished. Maybe they're going to feel guilty about it. Maybe they're psychopaths and they won't. So nothing's being done to them. They got their money, their nice houses, and they go on, live somewhere else, go on nice vacations, whatever, and having a good life, good satanic life. So authorities enforce taxation. And they have the automated, indirect, negative karmic consequence of also accepting to be stolen from, right? Because it's not like the police or the politicians don't get taxed. But they don't get the direct, individual negative karmic consequence unless free will creates it for them to experience. So yeah, they're all part of the collective too, and they're part of it, but they're benefiting at that. They're the parasites who are getting paid shitloads of money to produce no value in society and just act as if they're so important, to manage everything and micromanage everything about life. A king who imposes taxes, prohibition, licensure, doesn't share in the collective negative karmic consequences, unlike authorities enforcing taxation. That was even a higher level of separation. So free will was required to bring direct negative karmic consequences against them, and throughout history, it did happen. But until it happened, well, it wasn't happening. And they were on their fat ass throne, eating their fine food, and everyone else were serfs. So, fuck all happened to them until it did, because it doesn't just happen by itself. So, when you look at history, it demonstrates that violators continually, repeatedly are not getting direct negative karmic consequences. Unless free will causal agents bring it. This one, I was I think I was planning on taking it out. So it's reiterating some of the stuff I already mentioned. And as you can just look here, if you're just sending the cause and effect and you're harming someone else, initiating harm, then it's one-sided. But when it comes back, well, there's that return and that balance. I probably should have returned it, because everything is talked about in other slides in different ways, getting at the same message. Karma and the dark agenda. Dispersing negative karma by having everyone accept their enslavement is the dark agenda for those with dark care, acting in the dark will. That's the world they want to create. They don't mind the hell they create because they want to be masters of the hell they create, rather than be equals with others, living in peace and harmony. They don't want to be subordinate to natural law, living under the authority of natural law. They want to be an authority that usurps natural law. They want to be the gods and rulers of a hell, rather than be servants and equals in a heaven. Some people don't have willful dark care or dark will, but they operate under wrong thinking, believing their evil is good, their immorality is moral, and thus don't have true care or a will aligned with truth, but a will aligned with falsity, immorality, evil, and a false care that drives them to do immoral things to others, or support others to do so. That is to say, various forms of theft. They support other people doing various forms of theft. Either way, getting people to accept the immorality being done to them is dispersing negative karma to the aggregate instead of uniting to apply consequences to violators. I forgot my last slide for the thank you, so I'll just say thank you for your time and attention, and I'll be working on the subsequent presentations. Maybe I'll have the next one done next week, maybe not, and I'll do something else. We'll see. So, thank you for your time and attention. Take care. Peace.